There's a specific kind of loneliness that the people who feel most deeply almost never talk about honestly. Not the loneliness of being without people, not the loneliness of isolation or social exclusion, or the ordinary human experience of sometimes being alone in circumstances where connection would be preferred. Something more interior than any of those things. The loneliness of being consistently, reliably, in a fundamentally different register of experience than the people around you. Of feeling things at a depth and an intensity that the social world around you does not seem to share. Of being moved by what others pass through without apparent disruption. Of carrying a weight of interior experience that has no adequate external container in most of the ordinary social contexts of daily life. Gabor Maté understood this loneliness from the inside, not only as a clinician who sat with deeply sensitive people across decades of practice, as a person who had lived his entire life in a nervous system that processed experience at a depth and intensity that the surrounding world did not always have room for. He understood from direct personal experience and from clinical observation that the experience of feeling too much in a world that feels too little is not a malfunction of the nervous system that produced it. It is a specific, understandable, entirely predictable consequence of a nervous system that was built through specific developmental experience in response to specific circumstances to process experience at unusual depth. Today I want to give you the honest account of what that experience actually is, where it actually comes from, and what it actually makes available, not as compensation for the difficulty, not as the silver lining that reframes the pain, but as the genuine, clinical, personally observed truth about what the depth produces in the people who carry it honestly. If you have always felt too much in a world that feels too little, if that specific phrase landed somewhere real in you, drop 777 in the comments, not as performance, as honest recognition of a genuine experience that deserves honest language. Type 777, and let us go into the honest territory together. The first thing that needs to be said about feeling too much is the thing that is almost never said clearly. The intensity of your feeling is not a deficit. It is not evidence of insufficient emotional regulation or psychological immaturity or the failure to develop the appropriate thickness of skin that adult functioning supposedly requires. It is the output of a nervous system that has developed through the specific circumstances of its formation an extraordinary capacity for depth of processing. Gabor Maté was precise about this. He traced the development of unusual emotional depth and sensitivity to the specific quality of early relational experience, to environments that required the developing nervous system to process emotional information with unusual accuracy and unusual completeness in order to navigate what was present. The child who needed to read the room with extraordinary precision in order to feel safe. The child whose survival in an emotional sense depended on their capacity to detect subtle shifts in the emotional atmosphere of their environment before those shifts expressed themselves in behavior. The child who developed from genuine necessity a perceptual instrument of unusual refinement. That instrument does not switch off when the circumstances that required it change. It continues to operate. In adult life, in every room entered, every relationship inhabited, every conversation participated in. And it processes at the same depth it learned to process in the original environment, which means that ordinary experience for the deeply feeling person is rarely experienced as ordinary. It is experienced with the full weight of the instrument's capacity for depth. This is what feeling too much actually is. Not excess emotion in the pathological sense. Extraordinary perceptual and emotional depth in a world whose social structures were designed around a different and more ordinary level of processing. Now, I want to give you the 7 specific things that the experience of feeling too much in a world that feels too little is actually doing, not to you, but for you and through you, in ways that the loneliness of the experience so often makes invisible. The first thing it is doing is keeping you honest. The deeply feeling person cannot easily inhabit the comfortable fictions that make ordinary social life flow smoothly. The performed enthusiasm for things that do not actually generate enthusiasm. The polite interest in conversations whose surface they can feel is all there is. The social consensus that everything is fine when the emotional atmosphere of the room is communicating something entirely different. This inability to comfortably inhabit the comfortable fictions is experienced very often as social inadequacy, as the failure to perform the ordinary social ease that the surrounding world seems to manage without difficulty. But Gabor Maté understood it differently. He understood it as a specific and valuable form of honesty, the natural expression of a nervous system that processes at a depth that makes the fiction surface transparent. You cannot easily pretend that the fiction is the reality when your nervous system is continuously registering what is beneath it. That honesty is not always comfortable for the people around you. It is not always comfortable for you. But it is one of the most genuinely valuable things available in human relationship. The specific, rare quality of a person who is actually present to what is actually happening rather than to the managed version of it. The second thing it is doing is developing in you the capacity for genuine compassion that cannot be manufactured. We have explored this territory in other conversations, but it belongs here with particular precision. The capacity for genuine compassion, the specific, embodied, non-performed quality of being genuinely present to another person's pain without the need to immediately resolve it, is developed to the personal experience of genuine feeling. The person who has felt deeply, consistently, often without adequate container for the depth of their feeling, has developed something that the person who has managed to stay at the surface has not. The specific, direct, bodily felt knowledge of what it is to be in significant emotional experience and to need it to be received rather than managed. That knowledge produces genuine compassion, not performed compassion, the real thing, the thing that people recognize when they encounter it. And that produces the specific, often surprising quality of trust that deeply feeling people often generate in others. The trust of someone who can feel immediately that this person will not require them to be smaller than they actually are. The third thing it is doing is making you a more accurate perceiver of what is genuinely present in any situation. The deeply feeling person reads rooms, reads people, reads the emotional subtext of conversations with a precision that most people do not have access to. This is not mystical. It is the natural function of a nervous system that has been processing emotional information at unusual depth for an entire lifetime. The micro-expressions, the subtle shifts in vocal tone, the specific quality of a pause, the gap between what is being said and what is being felt, these register in the deeply feeling person's nervous system with an accuracy that the less sensitized system simply does not produce. This accuracy is an extraordinary practical resource. In every context that requires genuine understanding of what other people are actually experiencing, which is to say, in every meaningful human context available, the deeply feeling person has access to information that the ordinary perceiver does not. The specific, honest, often inconvenient information of what is actually present beneath the surface. The fourth thing it is doing is connecting you, whether you have consciously chosen this or not, to the questions that actually matter. The person who can stay comfortably at the surface of experience does not, very often, feel a strong pull toward the deepest questions available. They function well at the surface. The surface provides adequate satisfaction. The ordinary social world, organized as it is around the surface, rewards their surface competence generously enough that the deeper questions rarely generate sufficient urgency to demand genuine attention. The deeply feeling person does not have this option available in the same way. The surface does not provide adequate satisfaction. The ordinary social world does not feel like home. And from that specific discomfort, from the persistent, often painful sense of not quite fitting into the world organized around the surface, there comes, almost inevitably, the turn toward depth, toward the questions that the surface cannot answer, toward the interior territory that the surface organized world has rarely provided adequate language for. This turn toward depth is not a spiritual achievement. It is the predictable response of a nervous system that was always going to find the surface insufficient. But the territory it leads toward, the genuine psychological and spiritual depth that the surface organized world so rarely visits, is among the most important territory available to a human being. And the deeply feeling person, driven there by the very discomfort of the surface's inadequacy, arrives with a readiness and a genuine need that the more comfortable person rarely brings. The fifth thing it is doing is making you capable of genuine creative expression. Genuine creative work, the kind that reaches people rather than simply impresses them, the kind that produces recognition rather than simply admiration, almost always comes from genuine depth of feeling, from the specific, personal, completely non-transferable quality of someone who has actually been in the emotional territory they're attempting to express. The artist, the writer, the musician, the teacher, the speaker who moves people is almost always someone whose nervous system has processed the relevant experience at a depth that makes genuine expression rather than competent performance available. The deeply feeling person carries this depth as their natural operating condition, not as the special gift in a sense of something given without cost, as the specific, costly, genuinely extraordinary capacity of a nervous system that has never had the option of staying at the surface because the surface never felt like where the real experience was. The sixth thing it is doing is making you more capable of genuine presence in the relationships that matter most. The deeply feeling person brings something to their most significant relationships that the surface organized person cannot easily provide. Genuine presence, the specific, unhurried, non-managing quality of someone who's actually in the relationship rather than managing it, who's actually affected by the other person rather than simply processing them, who's actually moved by what moves, actually troubled by what troubles, actually delighted by what delights, without the constant overlay of management that keeps the surface organized person at a slight but significant distance from genuine relational contact. This genuine presence is both the deeply feeling person's greatest relational gift and the source of some of their greatest relational vulnerability. Because genuine presence requires genuine exposure. And genuine exposure in a world that does not always meet it with equivalent genuineness produces the specific pain that is one of the deepest costs of feeling too much. The pain of having been fully present in a relationship that was not fully present in return. But the capacity for genuine presence, however vulnerable it makes the person who carries it, is among the most valuable things one human being can offer another. And the deeply feeling person, for all the cost of the capacity, is genuinely equipped to offer it in a way that the more defended person is not. The seventh thing, and this is the one that Gabor Maté returned to as the most important and the most genuinely transformative understanding available to the person who has spent their life feeling too much in a world that feels too little. The feeling is not the problem. The absence of genuine container for the feeling is the problem. And the work of the deeply feeling person's life, that the specific, personal, entirely worthwhile work, is not the reduction of the feeling to something the world can more comfortably accommodate. It is the finding, building, and inhabiting of genuine containers that are adequate to what the feeling actually is. Not the management of the depth, the finding of contexts, relational, creative, professional, interior, that can genuinely hold the depth, that do not require it to be smaller or quieter or more manageable before it is welcome, that meet the full weight of the deeply feeling person's genuine interior experience with sufficient genuine capacity to receive it. Those containers exist. They are rarer than the deeply feeling person has often been told they should be. They require genuine searching and sometimes genuine building rather than simple finding, but they exist. And the deeply feeling person who arrives in them, who finds the relationship, the creative work, the interior practice, the genuine community that can actually hold what they carry, discovers something that the years of too much in a world of too little could not have produced. The specific, extraordinary, genuinely rare quality of being fully received, of having the depth met rather than managed, of discovering, perhaps for the first time, in a way that is fully felt rather than simply intellectually acknowledged, that what they carry is not excess. It is precisely enough for the life that their specific depth has always been moving them toward. And the privilege of a lifetime, the one Gabor Maté pointed toward across 50 years of sitting with human beings at the full honest depth of their most genuine experience, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not the reduced version, not the managed, quieted, made more comfortable for others version. Who you truly are, with the full depth, with the feeling that has always been, despite everything the world communicated about it, not too much, exactly enough, for exactly the life that only you are equipped to live.